photo books, zines, prints, whatever it is, I'm just really obsessed with everything that's printed and photography related. So in today's video, I'm going to show you my latest print photography pickups. The first book I like to show you is this one here, called Das Polaroid Projekt, or in English, The Polaroid Projekt, that I picked up at a bookstore in Munich. As the title says, this book is about Polaroid. For one, about the brand, about the technological improvements they came up with and the whole history behind the brand Polaroid, but also giving some really nice examples of artists that used Polaroid as a form of expression. For me, Polaroid was always somehow a mystery, and I was always wondering how it must have been to live in a time where suddenly instant photography with instant film, with peel-apart film was possible. And in this book, I think it's really nicely illustrated what kind of ideas were behind the brand Polaroid, but also what struggles they went through and how they solved it. So apart from the technological and historical approach in this book, what I really love most about it is the selection of artwork. Of course, all of the images here were somehow taken on Polaroid, but what I really like about this book and what drew me to buying it is that many of these images were taken on mixed media, combining Polaroid with other forms of art, as for example drawing, painting, or even sewing, and some other things I have seen in here. I myself kind of preach and think that different media are translatable. It's just like different languages to the same form of expression. And seeing other people combining drawing and painting with Polaroid and with photography is something that's really fascinating to me. Of course, there are some more known names included, as for example David Hockney with his Polaroid collages, but also some artists I have never heard of before, so it was really interesting to see a big variety of work and be able to read up on the artists later. So if you are into instant film, into Polaroid, or just in general into more abstract, experimental forms of photography, I would really advise you to take a look at this book. For me, it's still a huge source of inspiration, because every time I feel uninspired, I take a look at the images and see that photography is so much more. Photography can be whatever you want, and you can combine photography with whatever you want. So if you really need a boost in creativity and see things maybe a bit differently, check this out. The next book is probably something you already know, and it's the book NYC I Love You by Greer. As soon as he said he would publish a book, I knew that I would have to get my hands on a copy of one. And this book can be understood as some sort of love letter to New York, to Greer's time living in New York and documenting the streets. The images in this book were taken over a relatively long time, between 2017 and 2020. And I can only imagine how many images there were to be selected to go into the book. And I have seen some of the images before on social media, but honestly, seeing them printed is still such a different experience. And at first I was a bit scared that maybe this would just be a like best of street photos kind of book, but I think it's not. I think it's much more than that, because you can see that he put a lot of thought and time into sequencing and choosing the images, and it really feels like a whole kind of love letter to New York. And yeah, I think it's really great work, and the image quality, the paper quality is really nice as well. And I think the whole arrangement of the book, having the pictures in a specific order, making very concrete choices on which image has to stand alone on a page and which image pairs up with a page on the other side, I think is really well done. And I think there's no single image that I don't like about this book. I have to say that I don't know if you can still get this book or not, but if you have the chance to get your hand on one, I'm pretty sure you won't regret it, because this book is really beautiful, and if you are into street photography, I think this would be a great addition to the collection. So I don't know if you have heard about this, but in the back of the book there's a small little typo in the title, and I think for Greer and for the company that produced the book, it was a big issue. They sent out emails apologizing about the typo, but I have to say I don't really mind. I think just the opposite. I think it's a very charming little mistake or fault, if you want to call it that, that kind of, you know, shows that we're all human, and it doesn't matter how much time and how much energy you put into a project like this, mistakes can still happen. So I don't mind at all. I think it's quite charming and quite sympathetic, so here it goes. Okay, I'm probably a bit late to the party with this one, but I couldn't make the video without also showing this zine, which is a Return to London by Madison Beach, a fellow YouTuber that probably everybody who's following my channel also knows. So very similar to Joe Greer's book, I think Madison's zine is also telling the story how you can get connected to a city and how it must feel like to return to a specific city. And for her, it's about London, and just gonna show you the cute little cover she also did to put the zine in. So what I really love about the zine is that it's more a mixed media approach. So apart from photographs, she also included notes, tickets, contact sheets, little bits and bobs here, which I really like, and I think really supports the story of returning to a specific city. So the shots in here are also really great. It's mostly street shots, and when looking through the zine, I can totally feel how it must be to be in the city, and I almost get a sense as if I'm in the city myself. And I think this one must be my favorite shot, and I think the composition on here is just really insane. So what I also like a lot about the zine is that it's not as predictable. Madison is playing around with different arrangements of the images, and every page just feels so different and you never know what there is to come. She's playing around with, for example, overlayering different photos over another, having like different sizes of the images, and when browsing like other photo books, it sometimes can be too predictable, because you know, when you flip the page there will be a black and white image on a white background, and with this one it doesn't feel this way. It's like exciting, and every page just tells a really different story. And I think the whole arrangement of how the images are placed, and when she used negative space and when she had like more chaos in with a lot of elements, I think is something that also kind of corresponds with the sense how I think one might perceive London as a city, having a lot of chaos, a lot of elements every now and then, but also having some time to breathe and some space in between. And once again, I don't know if she is still selling the zines or not, but if you want to know, you should definitely hit her up and ask if she has some copies left, because this zine is definitely worth it. So the next thing in line is also a zine, and this one is called Zine A7II by Sebastian Kortmann, which is a zine that was completely shot on CineStill film. And what I was really surprised by was that apart from the zine itself, it also came with some postcards and some cool stickers. So as the title says, it's the second zine of a series. So before that there was also a Zine A7I, but back then I didn't have the chance to buy it, so unfortunately this is the first zine of him I have, but if I ever get the chance to buy the first one as well, I will for sure do so. So what I really like about the zine is the variety of subject matter. There's some fashion shots, there's some portraits, urban landscapes, street photography, and more kind of lifestyle stuff. And I think this really feels like some everyday life type of photography. Sebastian Kortmann is a photographer and director based in Berlin, and when I look through the zine I kind of get an idea how his life must look like. You know, just taking shots of your friends going to jobs and taking, for example, fashion portraits, but just having your camera around every time, so you can also catch those street and night scenes and urban landscapes. So one of my favorite images must have been the golden sofa, because here you can see the halations and reflections of CineStill in places you maybe wouldn't kind of expect beforehand. For me it was nice to see how other people use this film and kind of also shoot scenes that maybe you wouldn't think would work great on this film, but in the end really did. Since being shot on one film stock only, I think this zine looks very coherent and is overall just really nice and very aesthetic to look at. So if you want to get a copy of one of those, you should definitely hit up Sebastian Kortmann over on Instagram. I went to pick something else up over on eBay and talked to this elderly man. We had a coffee and a chat about photography and traveling and art and just everything. And in the end he asked me if I would be interested in some old magazines because his wife was annoyed and needed some space and he would otherwise throw them out. Of course I said yes, and this is what I got. These are old magazines. I think most of them are from around the year 2000 to 2005. And there are the Hasselblad forum magazines, which feature, of course, Hasselblad cameras, but also really nice artists. So usually you have a page about an artist here, and then you can see and read up on his work. The images in some of these magazines are just really nice, and I think it's really interesting to see like magazines in this high quality, because the paper quality and the print are really good, and it feels like almost like having a short film, just short little snippets about 2 or 3 artists in each magazine that are highlighted. Also very different stuff. You have portrait photographers, you have landscape photographers, street photographers, documentary, fashion, pretty much everything. And just the big variety of different artists is really great. So I will keep them, have a good read, and maybe pass them on to somebody who might also be interested in them. And last but not least, we have a lovely little print that I bought from a German photographer called Gilmer. I'm gonna unpack it for you. So look at this, isn't this insane? Such a minimal and just totally beautiful composition. I will frame this and I know exactly where this is going. This will have a nice spot on my wall. I just kind of regret not getting more of his prints, because his work is always this minimal abstract with a very reduced color palette that I really enjoy and that I think would look really nice on the walls. But who knows, maybe I will get some more in the future, but I will have to make some space on my walls because things are getting a bit tight here. So that's it for today. These were all my recent printed photography pickups, but I'm sure that these will not be the last. I don't know about you, but I think images were not meant to only be viewed on a screen. But for me personally, I think having something printed is the highest goal you can have in photography. I mean, it literally adds another dimension to your images, because you have to make choices. You have to make choices of size and paper and structure and everything when printing your work. And when going a step further and putting together a zine or a photo book, you don't have to think about your images themselves, but also in the sequencing and the choice of format and the choice of paper and everything that is surrounded. And I think having something tangible where you can see the structure of the paper is just so worth it. I print my pictures for me personally all the time, but getting it out there to make it accessible to other people is just a totally next step. So if there is something that you picked up recently that's printed, be it a book, zine, print or whatever, or if there's something that you've been lusting after, please let me know in the comments down below so that I can extend my wish list and go fully bankrupt on photo books. And that said, I would say keep printing, keep looking at printed art, and see you in the next one.